If you want to see cowboys in action, all you got to do is be out here when they're getting ready to ship or something, and you see it.
A specialist in folk life and folklore at Emporia State University, Jim Hoy has written extensively on the cowboy culture of the Flint Hills. It's an area with which he's quite familiar because he grew up there.
I did. I was raised on a little ranch down at Cassidy, Kansas, which was at one point called the cow capital of Kansas. They shipped more cattle in and out of the Santa Fe there than any other stockyards for a few years. They'd bring them in maybe 40 or 44 to a railroad car, and when they shipped them out, they could only get like 28 on. They'd gained that much weight. You know, the two most colorful symbols of American folk culture are the railroad and the cowboy, and the two were merged very strongly in the Flint Hills. The interesting thing about the Flint Hills is, you know, in most areas, the farmer and the cowboy are separate entities, and in the musical Oklahoma, they've got that song, "The farmer and the cowboy can be friends." Well, in the Flint Hills, the farmer and the cowboy can be the same person, because you might own a little farm, have a few head of cattle, and have to work that farm as a just plain old dirt farmer. On the other hand, you can also be a good cowboy. You might run some pasture or certainly work for other guys, help ship, help work cattle, and I've known a lot of good rodeo performers who were really Flint Hills farmers. Cowboy poetry is a tradition that goes back to the origin of the cowboy, which is way back in the 1860s. Cowboys sang a lot of songs when they were riding night herd or coming up the trail, and apparently made up a lot of poems too for the same reason, to kind of occupy their minds during the dull periods. And any of you who've worked as a cowboy know that about 80% of the time things are often pretty dull. You're riding along in the old days behind a trail herd for hundreds of miles, or in modern times you're driving a pickup for 20 or 30 miles. The other 20% of the time is violent action, sometimes fatal action or potentially fatal action. So the bucking horses and the roping gave you something to write about when things were a little bit smoother and easier and you had time to do it. I never really thought of it, but as I was growing up, we heard quite a bit of poetry, and that was from my dad, who's sitting right here in front of me. Would ride pastures, and he would recite poems he'd learned in high school. Charlotte the Frozen Girl, and The Ride of Jenny McNeil, and Sheridan's Ride. Not what you'd call cowboy poetry, and that didn't have to do with cowboys, but it was a cowboy reciting poetry anyway. And as I looked into this, I've discovered that a lot of the old-time cowboys didn't sing cowboy songs or recite cowboy poetry. They did the same sort of thing. They'd sing hymns or they'd sing popular songs when they rode around the cattle, and then began to make up some different words to those melodies and add a little bit of the cowboy flavor to it.
There had been drovers all over the world for hundreds of years before the cowboy, before these cattle drives. But it was these huge herds driven from Texas to Kansas over long distances that captured the public imagination. And this figure of the cowboy, of the American cowboy, that comes from this era has become a symbol for the entire country. You want to be recognized anywhere in the world as an American, you stick one of these on your head. The cowboy has become probably the single most powerful image of our country, of any.
Emporia State University professors Jim Hoy and Tom Eddy are hosts for some of the trips. Teachers can obtain college credit learning about the Flint Hills.
We have sponsored a wagon train class as part of our summer school program. We bring students, most of whom are teachers, not all, but most of them are teachers, for a 2-day trip out into the Flint Hills on covered wagons, so we can give them an experience quite similar really to immigrants crossing the plains a century and a half ago. I teach folklore classes at Emporia State. I'm a native of the Flint Hills. In fact, my home's about 15 miles from where we're standing right now. I was raised on a ranch there in the Flint Hills and still have an interest in cattle and horses and ranching in the Flint Hills, and I've done a lot of research on the history, the folklore, the culture of the Flint Hills. So this class ties right into it. So students, whether they enroll in the English class or the biology class, they get to hear both of us, and they get to find out about the plants out here, how the Indians, the pioneers, used them for medicine and for food and other things like that. And they also get to hear me talk about the prehistory of this area, the Indian history, the Native American history, the settlement history, and the way the Flint Hills have been used for the past 150 years. In other words, the cattle culture here that makes this a distinctive region.
These 5 million acres of native grass in the Flint Hills and the southern tip of the Flint Hills, which are called the Osage Hills by the Oklahomans, that's the last large, significant expanse of tallgrass prairie in the whole world.
Director of the Center for Great Plains Studies at Emporia State University and a fourth-generation Flint Hills native, Jim Hoy writes about cowboy culture and the ranching heritage of the Flint Hills.
The peculiar, maybe peculiar is the wrong word, the distinctive style of ranching in the Flint Hills, very different from that in other parts of the West. For one thing, there's more of the pasturing of transient cattle, come in for the grazing season, go on. There's smaller ranches. 10,000 acre ranch in the Flint Hills will provide the same kind of living that a 100,000 acre ranch would provide in eastern Colorado or someplace like that. It's just the grass is so much better. Well, this program is called Singing the Cattle North. It's about the origin of the American cowboy and the big trail drives.
Jim's often quoted for a reference he makes to the Flint Hills as not being a particularly breathtaking landscape.
People drive through this area and don't see anything. There's nothing there to see. That's the point. When you drive through the Rocky Mountains, the Cascade Mountains, the Great Smoky Mountains, you go to the Grand Canyon, wow, it knocks your socks off. You can't help but notice this is something. The Flint Hills don't take your breath away. The Flint Hills give you a chance to breathe. You can relax here. But if you'll relax, you look around, you got big sky, you got these miles of expansive prairie. You can just really enjoy nature, enjoy that sense of wide open spaces. When I was 7 years old, we had a pasture 2 or 3 miles south. The railroad split and the highway split, and we were bringing some cows home, and one of them got out on the right-of-way of the railroad. I was 7. I went out after her, I was running her down, and a train came by and spooked my horse. I got thrown off. I can still see that horse's belly as she walked over me and stepped on my right ribs. Ooh. She was a tame, gentle horse, but I was in the wrong place and crushed my liver. I was told by the doctor my liver looked like hamburger. And they wrapped it with something that had been invented just a little over a year earlier, healed it up, and I survived.
Whenever we've done stories about cowboy culture in the Flint Hills, we've drawn upon the expertise of Jim Hoy, director of the Center for Great Plains Studies at Emporia State. In our first story, we see how Jim's son and his wife are providing others with the opportunity to jump on a horse and drive a herd of longhorn cattle through the hills.
My dad and my grandfather were both cowboys, so I always wanted to do that. I've worked all over the place, all over the West, going around working at different ranches and seeing the country. I think it was in '96 I partnered up with my cousin and we bought this place together. And yeah, I went from being a cowboy to a rancher. And I always say the difference between a cowboy and a rancher is a rancher has a checking account and an ulcer. So
they bought this 1,000 acres we're on right here to start with and added some more to it over the years. About 10 years ago, Josie and his wife Gwen decided that they needed to kind of supplement that ranch income, and they decided to do agritourism. Invite people in and they give horse rides, wagon rides, stuff like that.
Close to 2,000 people a year come through here, so, and want various activities, either horseback riding or do photography, or painting or just kind of whatever they want.
They've had people come here to ride, and instead of doing single file, nose to tail horses. It's kind of a trail ride. Like we did today, people get to go out and do real ranch work.
All right, let's head to the backside.
We're burning daylight, so. All right, everybody just come on with us.
We've always moved our cows around, but last year we started bringing guests along to do it. We'd always just done it because we need to. We move them from pasture to pasture so the grass will grow up when they're not there. So we just decided, hey, let's advertise and see if anybody wants to do it. And everyone we put up on the website sold out almost immediately. So we figured, well, we better keep doing this. So we've just been doing it steadily ever since. And we've just found the more people we get out here doing things, the more people fall in love with the hills. And the safer the hills are, the better off the hills are.
Come on, mamas, take your babies. Come on now. Come on, girls. Good boy, Possum.
I think it's been good to give people an idea of what life is really like out here in the Flint Hills and an appreciation of the lifestyle, and it gives them some access. It gives them some ability to get out there and experience it.
Dad, kind of open up and let them through.
We still make more off of our traditional agriculture than we do off the agritourism. But the next few years, I think maybe the agritourism will surpass the agricultural income.
You really have to plan your week out, so you can't just, you got to take care of the ranch and take care of guests, and so it's, you kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hard to fit it all in, but you do, but it's a challenge.
We were pretty wary of it at first. We were worried that it'd be intrusive on our life and all, but actually it works out. We get to ride a lot more than we, if I wasn't taking people out riding and all that, I'd be building fence or doing some other horrible job that I need to do. So this works out a lot better. So we can spend a lot more time horseback and get to share what we love with people that come out and appreciate it. We love it. It's really fun.